Okay, it's 5 o'clock, so we'll start. Welcome everybody to our 6th annual final round of the Lowell Milken Institute-Sandler Prize for New Entrepreneurs. We're really grateful and excited to be able to do it again this year in person, and we're also virtual, that we have a webcast going on as well. First, I want to thank Lowell Milken and Richard Sandler for their vision in first conceiving this competition for the law school and their support of keeping this, creating this competition and then keeping it moving forward. And also to Dean Mnookin, Jennifer Mnookin, who is the Dean of the Law School and who has been a huge supporter of this competition as well. I also want to thank the LMI team, which really worked hard to create this final round and also work throughout the entire competition, in particular Nancy Le, Sarah Karobkin. We have a special team member today, Alexandra Mata, who's helping us, and also Rachel Estrada. So 6 teams are finalists in this final round, and they're going to be judged by 3 different judges, and I want to introduce the judges, and I've put their photos up so that the folks at home can see them as well. First we have Mujang Kazarani, who I've listed some of her many achievements here. She's also been a great friend of mine. I've known her for many, many years, and she's come to speak to my class about the role of the General Counsel. And she is also a major investor in new companies. So an excellent judge for us. The second judge is Jenny Leung, who is not only an entrepreneur herself, but is also a member of Techstars Los Angeles, where she is the program director, and is the 2018 winner of the prize, of the Lowell Milken Institute-Sandler Prize for her venture, Bella Nove, which was very, very successful and recently sold. So we're very glad to have her. And finally, we have Richard Sandler, who has been the judge in each of our competitions, and so has the experience of how this competition works, and is also an entrepreneur and an investor in a wide variety of companies with many decades of experience. So we're thrilled to have them all, and we're also thrilled that they are all UCLA alums. So before we go on, I just want to set out a couple of rules. First rule is that each team will have 10 minutes to make their presentation. It will be uninterrupted. They'll have up to 10 minutes. And that will be followed by 8 minutes of questions from the judges. And only the judges can ask questions. Sarah Karobkin, who is sitting over there, will be the timekeeper. And teams, she will let you know when you have 2 minutes left, 1 minute left, and when your time is up. And when your time is up, your time is up. And judges will let you know when you have 2 minutes, 1 minute, and then time is up for the 8 minutes. Let's see. Final little rule here is where to stand. So in order to pick up for the webcast, up to this point and up to this point, and I understand you can go up in front of the podium here if you like. All right? But stay in that area so that when you're talking, the folks at home can also see you. We have, as I said, 6 teams. We're on a very, very tight schedule. So once your 18 minutes is up, we're going to ask you to vacate the stage and the next team to come up. We have like a 2-minute turnaround. And we'll make sure that your PowerPoint is on. One final important rule, because we've had this problem before, there is a button on the screen that says "Shut down system under no circumstances." Touch that button. Several years ago when we first did this, it was from Anderson. It wasn't a lot. Touch that button, and we had a 10-minute delay because the whole system has to reboot and cool down, and we don't want to do that today. All right, so do not touch that button under any circumstances. Okay, we pick the teams, the order of the teams by lot, and the first team that's up is Lost Abroad, so I'll ask you to come up, and we'll get started.
to go? Are we good to go?
Yeah.
All right. Hi everyone, my name is Brent Oberlin. I'm excited to present to you Lost Abroad, a startup that's bringing about the future of language immersion. We're going to give you an introduction to the idea and the market, show you a prototype of our game, talk about our marketing efforts to date, our team, and then talk about our financials and our path forward. A little bit of background. When I was an undergrad, I studied abroad in Hong Kong, and on the bus from the airport to my new dorm, I noticed that no one was using the button to stop the bus. They were just yelling up, "Yellow," and the bus stopped. So, I mean, I can pick up on a pattern. My dorm was approaching. I yelled, "Yellow," the bus stopped. I realized Cantonese is so easy. And I learned a lot that way, and by asking my friends and classmates. And to be honest, no one's surprised. Everyone knows immersion is the best way to learn a language, but not very many people can do that. It's expensive to go travel abroad, and it's a big commitment to do that. So instead, people turn to apps. You've probably heard of Duolingo, Babbel, Rosetta Stone, the list goes on. But these apps don't work very well because, one, they just throw words at you. They're just throwing translations, and they're hoping that it sticks eventually. And two, that's no fun. People don't stick with it. Something that they do stick with, and they do day after day, month after month, year after year, though, is play video games. There's this popular genre of video games called Life Sims. You've probably heard of them. The Sims, Animal Crossing, Stardew Valley. And they're kind of mundane. You talk to your neighbors, you go fishing, you make crafts. But people love them. I love them. And I thought, can we make a game that uses these mechanics to stimulate immersion and teach someone a language way better than these current apps? Make it fun, accessible, immersive, and effective. And if we can make it, will people buy it? And if they buy it, then we should do that. I think that the answers are like, yes, we can do it, and yes, it'll make money. And to talk about how we got to those answers, I'm going to pass it off to Jack, too.
Thank you, Grant. So we have the idea, but is the market there? Currently, there are almost 2 billion people around the world who are learning a language. And the digital language learning scene is buzzing right now, and was predicted to almost triple by 2025. And US alone accounts for more than a third of the entire market, and the non-English learning is also growing rapidly. So the market opportunity is definitely there. As you can see, we have ranked all the existing language learning solutions on the market based on the learning efficacy, which is from top to down, and the accessibility from left to right. As you can see, true immersion obviously works great, but it's hard to come by. However, you don't have to top this chart to capture the market. As seen here, flashcards and vocab games are super popular, with Duolingo having a whopping 6 billion market cap, thanks to its incredible accessibility. However, as you can see, there is a little gap in the market, and that's where we're going to compete in. We plan to use a combination of virtual immersion that is almost as good as true immersion, plus sound pedagogy to provide a structured and effective learning experience. So how should we design the game? We conducted hundreds of hours of in-depth user interviews, interviewing language learners, teachers, and experts, and asking them for their needs and pain points. And here is a summary of all the findings, and we implemented all of them into our design. Let's have a look.
So this is our 10-minute introductory sequence that I've sped up to take about 30 seconds. The player is dropped into a coffee shop in China and wants to order a coffee, but presumably doesn't already speak Chinese. So what they do is they listen through what all of the other customers in line order, and they're given instructions on, here's what they're saying, here's how to break that down, practice it yourself, give them some questions to refresh it, and then at the very end, they're asked to take what they've learned, make their own sentence, practice it, and then their character gets a little coffee. And this is the key to Lost Abroad's method. When you use your new language and what you just asked for happens, that triggers much stronger connections in your brain, and we think that this is our advantage over other similar competitors. We plan to continue building this out into our first releasable game called An Afternoon in Shanghai, where players will go to 5 or 6 different locations and learn the basics of the vocabulary they'll need to visit China, and then expand that out into a full game released in about 2 years. Then from there, we'll add on additional content, really specialized stuff about holidays and business Chinese, etc., and expand into additional languages. So The question now is, okay, there's a big market, we've shown we can build something, do people want it? Through surveys and customer interviews, we've identified our target market as people aged 13 to 25 that are interested in learning Chinese that already play some casual games on their phones or laptops. And then we set up a simple website talking about our game. It says, hey, sign up to play our demo. Then pointed some social media ads on it from Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And we've seen that when people see these ads in this demographic, they really want it. We've got great cost per click and click-through rate numbers. And most importantly, we're spending 83 cents per person signing up. And the industry average for casual games is spending $1.96 for each customer acquisition. So the industry average is twice as much as what we're spending on these. Our team, I won't give you all of our bios, but some key players, myself and Victor Yuchheim, who's based out of London, are our principal developers for the game. And then Jack Du has 5 years of Mandarin teaching experience. He's our principal educator. And we've filled out our advisors with people in the gaming industry and also with experience fundraising for startups. I'm now going to pass it on to Bei and Z to talk about the legal and regulatory considerations.
Thanks, Brand. We have already incorporated as a Delaware C Corp. This entity choice is based on the nature of our business and is aligned with our fundraising plans. Moving forward, our legal support will focus on 2 aspects of the venture. One is IP protection, 2 is fundraising activities.
As for IP protection, we will apply for design patents to protect our game designs, such as the user interface design that we just showed you. We will also register our Lost Abroad trademark to protect our brand. In the future, we will also retain IP attorneys. And as a starting point, we have already drafted a preliminary California-specific PIAA for outside counsel to review.
In future financing rounds, to ensure compliance with SEC regulations, we will mostly utilize the private placement exemptions, namely Section 482 and Rule 506B. We will also utilize the crowdfunding exemption. And before starting to raise outside fund, our founders have already reduced their mutual understanding of ownership and their role into a written agreement and signed it. Of course, we'll keep an updated cap table after each financing round.
Perfect. And I'm going to go over our revenue model and then take us home. So as you can see on the board, as Brent mentioned earlier, we're planning on offering a free demo first, and then later a full game for $19.99. We're going to continue to monetize our users by offering downloadable content in the $5 to $10 range. And then as we advance as a company, we plan to sell additional languages as separate games. So our choice to sell as a full game rather than a freemium subscription model is twofold. First, we recognize that we're not planning on having any multiplayer content for the first few years, and most freemium models are based on high-paying power users that are driven by multiplayer interactions, so that wasn't a great fit for our business model. Secondly, we recognize that companies like Duolingo go very broad on languages and then build downwards. We think that our advantage is we plan on going very deep on Mandarin, and after that, starting to broaden out. And we think that we can fulfill that better by charging for the game upfront rather than monetizing on a subscription. So, to touch back on our fundraising milestones, we are going to shoot to close a $400,000 round in Q2 2022. That's going to be crowdfunding, angels, friends and family. We're going to use those funds to release the Afternoon in Shanghai game we discussed earlier. By Q1 2023, we're going to have put out an Afternoon in Shanghai, and on the back of that raised $2 million, which is going to go towards the full release of the game, which brings us to Q2 2024. We'll have the full game out. We'll be raising $4 million. That's going to bridge us to profitability. And so, if you can see again, our financials are here. We should be cash flow positive by 2025. After the release of the game, we're going to explore Spanish, potentially another language, maybe English, after we get Chinese to the market and continue to develop that. We'll pick up a third game in 2026, and then we'll continue to explore multiplayer and VR content as the technology advances. So, next steps, we will be building out directions, greeting, and shopping modules. We will be wrapping that fundraising round, and we will continue to optimize our ads and video content so that we can reach our users most effectively. And with that, come get lost abroad with us. Scan the QR code to join the waitlist.
Great job. I know how it feels to be on the other side, so you did a great job. I want to start off with asking you about your differentiator against the other things that are out there. Specifically, in your business plan, you've written about real-time, actionable, personalized feedback. How is that technology put into place? Can you tell me more about that?
Jack, you want to start on that?
Yeah, so thank you. That's a great question, and that's something we think a lot about, actually. So our approach is that a lot of the games give you, for example, a feedback of right or wrong. So if you put in a recording of a pronunciation, and if it's not so great, it wouldn't let you progress. Right? So our goal is to actually have more nuanced feedback. We're actually contacting the MIT project right now. They're working on the tonal detection in Mandarin Chinese, because that has always been historically very difficult. And we would like to be able to give very actionable feedback forward, telling them, why is your tone is not so accurate, and how do you actually put your tone in the right place, and where do you, have the sort of air coming out of your mouth in order to achieve a really accurate kind of pronunciation going forward. And also, we already implemented a whole lot of feedback into our demo already. So when you're rearranging the words for a sentence, for example, I would like to order a cup of coffee. If you said, cup of coffee likes to order me, then we'll say, hey, this is grammatically perfectly correct. But the word order in Chinese is the same as in English. So you essentially said this. So that sort of gives you an idea of what the feedback sort of looks like.
Any possible way you can get that wrong, there's different feedback on how to make it better.
Yeah.
Okay, just a quick follow-up on that. With that MIT tonal detection, is that a partnership? Is that licensing, or do you own any of that?
So they're currently under development. So there is this lab that I, got to know via some, teacher friend contact. And so we're still talking about that. I don't think they have any sort of business yet. So that's, still under development.
So just following up on that last question there, so with respect to what they have at MIT, does the actual program exist today to do that, or are they working on it?
Well, they're mostly working on it, but I think they have made some good progress on certain sounds and stuff so far, but it's still a work in progress.
Okay.
And just added on to that, we're not relying on the MIT thing to bring that about. There are other, Chinese speech-to-text programs that we can utilize to recognize what someone said, and then we'll then have some additional code on our end to detect how that's wrong from what they were supposed to say and give them feedback. So we're not only relying on that, but we're talking to them frequently because they're doing it better than the current speech-to-text.
So we actually looked at this market in detail. So one of the biggest things, and I just want to hear your thoughts on how you looked at the competitors and their pricing mechanisms and how you chose yours and why you think yours, and you did touch on it just briefly, but will be profitable, because in almost all circumstances, the biggest issue in this kind of a market is taking free users and getting them to pay. And then once they've paid once, to get them to pay anything again, right? If there's no sort of a subscription method or, some sort of in-game methods of utilizing and monetizing on it. So I'd love to hear more about that and why you think this will work with yours as opposed to, and I know in the past, others in the market have done the same and then have basically taken it and tried to make it into a subscription model.
So you want to take this one?
I can take this one. I think we looked at whether or not a freemium model would work, and I know most of the competitors in the space go for a freemium model. I think that the way we wanted to approach this was to align the pricing with the core competency of the actual game itself, and in this case, it aligns. It's more comparable to say selling an Animal Crossing video game where we want to include a lot of the content into the game. We want to sort of avoid this freemium trap of, a lot of players complain about Duolingo because they will essentially get nickel and dime for running out of lessons, and then they have to pay more money to keep learning, and that essentially goes against how someone would actually learn. If you're making too many mistakes, they stop you from being able to play the game until you pay more money. And so fundamentally, I think we want to align our pricing strategy with how we actually want to teach people. In terms of how we came up with the actual price point, that was through looking at comparable educational games as well as other popular games on Steam, and also consulting with some of our advisors who have good, lots of industry experience in the video gaming industry. And we came up with around $19.99, triangulating to that point as a sort of optimal range.
Are any of your competitors aligned with any educational institutions where their actual product is used in schools?
So when I was teaching at high schools in New Zealand, Duolingo wasn't seen as a viable kind of option that was replacing or properly supplementing what you're teaching, because the sort of curriculum and the teaching stuff didn't align very well. I know that Duolingo currently, they're actually trying to offer this standardized testing for English kind of approach. But that's not necessarily in the teaching space. So we kind of really want to dig into the things that the teachers really want to teach and align with the curriculum. And currently we have some hypotheses we're still testing. One is the HSK, which is the Chinese proficiency test, that if you pass the first level, you can do a certain number of things, and that involves like 300 vocab in Chinese. And then also like the Common Core in the US and maybe even AP Chinese. So we're still exploring that and trying to really align with what the teachers need and use the teachers as almost a beachhead market, because they have influence over students, parents, and potentially schools.
Thank you.
What is your traction right now? You have, I think, a beta test with 5,000 on the wait list. Like what else? Where else are you at?
So from advertising our beta, we've got between 700 and 800 people signed up through there that are on our wait list currently. So multiply that 0.83 times 700.
And the product itself is in development right now?
So we have the playable prototype that we're bringing people off the wait list on a one-on-one basis and doing personal interviews with them. So it's playable, but we're not openly releasing it to everyone yet. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much. Next up is Team Investigator.
Hello everybody, welcome to Bestie, the ultimate influencer incubator. We are the Bestie C-suite as well as the all JD team. So I would like everybody to please raise your hand if you know who this woman is. For those of you who do not know who this woman is, this is Addison Rae, a multi-millionaire TikTok star and one of the most famous influencers in the world. And she is exactly who we are trying to recruit influencers to be like and offer our product to. The influencer marketing industry is huge right now, over $16 billion. And what's moreover, corporate America is actually responding very positively to this. 90% of marketers have used influencer marketing, and it's becoming a more mainstream way for giant conglomerates to reach their targeted consumers. So Addison Rae was not always Addison Rae. At one point, she was what's called a micro-influencer. A micro-influencer is anybody who has between 1,000 and 100,000 followers. And what's really important about micro-influencers is that they have the most engaged followers of any kind of influencer. They are the most likely to click on things, buy the products that the influencers are selling, and honestly, they're the most valuable kind of targeted consumers. But what's the problem with them, with these micro-influencers? For the most part, they're doing great, but they can't grow their business alone. They need capital and they need resources. Their followers are crucial to their success, but they can't participate in any meaningful ways. Sure, they can interact with them on their platforms, send messages, but they can't participate in their success in any kind of meaningful way. And lastly, most people don't understand NFTs very well. We like to pretend that we do. We like to talk about them at parties and sound fun, but you're not confident enough to invest in them fully. What exists right now to serve these micro-influencers are a series of agencies, incubators, and platforms that either do one of two things. They either raise capital or they offer resources to these micro-influencers. But there's not a one-stop shop that offers both at the same time and the same place. And that is why we thought of Vesti as this one-stop shop. Influencers can gain access to brand partnerships, equipment, develop skills, and be connected to other talented people who can help them grow their business and eventually scale it to an Addison Rae type size. Simultaneously, the other part of the twin business model is the user side, or the investor side. Everyday people can log onto this beautiful portal right here and invest in their favorite influencers. They can browse by genre, they can decide their measured level of risk, and they can go off of the algorithm if they need be, if they have complete control, or they can surrender to the app if they want. But the most important part of this twin business model is this. While our brand management team is managing these influencers and connecting them to the resources they need, it grows the value of the NFTs that the users are investing in as fractionalized NFTs.
So how does this work? So on the influencer side, influencers are going to sign with Vesti the same way that a musician would sign with a record label. And so Vesti makes money with this partnership by contracting to receive 20% of the influencer's brand-generated revenue, which is an industry standard within the entertainment industry. And in exchange, Vesti will provide world-class resources for brand development, utilizing our advisory board of influencers and other resources. And the influencers will receive this payout, this 80% quarterly, which is also industry standard for the entertainment industry. And we're going to circle back to the NFT part because the investors or the users will be able to browse our influencers on our mobile app and decide who interests them, whether that's because of what type of risk they want to invest in or what kind of interest they're in, whether you want to invest in a comedian or a health influencer or whatever interests you. And from there you will receive equity as NFTs. And this will sell on the NFT, on marketplaces that sell NFTs like OpenSea, and you can sell them over time for substantial gains. And each time that an NFT is sold on the marketplace, the great thing about using NFTs is that these smart contracts will allow 7% of the transaction value to be automatically transferred to the influencers. They have a recurring stream of revenue, and 3% to Vesti. So why on earth are we using NFTs and not real equity? So NFTs are part of a skyrocketing trade market. In 2021, there was $17 billion worth of trades, which is up 23,000% from 2020. So this trade market is absolutely booming, and more people than ever want to be involved. Additionally, the automatic recurring gains per transaction is something very unique and only possible through the use of NFTs. In traditional equity, when you buy a stock, the company whose stock is being purchased doesn't benefit after that initial purchase, no matter who sells it or buys it after that. And also it's extremely efficient, and blockchain technology provides for increased accountability and transparency. So how are we going to do this? We are going to mint or create an NFT, which essentially, if you don't know what an NFT is at this point, it's a non-fungible token. So it's a digital record that represents a tangible asset, and it can be bought and sold online. And we're going to create one of these that represents each influencer's brand, and we are going to utilize the Polygon blockchain, and from there integrate smart contracts into the NFT. And these smart contracts will detail how and where the transaction fees are transferred and what rights are allocated with the NFT purchase. So just like if you purchase equity, you would get dividends or something like that. When you buy an NFT, the influencer will get to choose what rights are accompanied in that bundle. So they can allocate certain IP rights to use their brand and certain, maybe even a percentage of revenue. So that's up to the influencer. And we're going to post this on OpenSea, which will be integrated through our mobile application via API, and users will be able to purchase through this network.
Great, so our marketing plan heavily involves including the influencers in the process itself. We have an influencer advisory council where, as Gabby mentioned, the influencers that we recruit to be the first wave of our clients will actually have a say in how we market to their friends, their fellow influencers, whoever it may be, or be our first clients. Our targeted demos are first-time NFT investors, as well as Generation Z and millennials. And I think that it's very important to note that most NFT investors, as of right now, it seems that they don't truly understand the underlying cash flows of those NFTs. But with Vesti's influencers, you can actually look at their profiles and see how many followers they have and roughly correlate that to how much money they actually earn and bring in. So you can actually project those cash flows in what you're investing in. We'll also focus heavily on social media as our spending, and we will offer the first users or investors a discounted fee for joining the app.
Okay, so since we want Vesti to be a viable and sustainable business, we have to address the operational, legal, and regulatory risks. Many of these are common with new apps or businesses, but there's a few that stand out to Vesti because of our desired business model. So first is the California agency law. California Labor Code requires agents who procure employment for artists to be licensed. And compliance is highly suggested because the labor commissioner favors artists and they can order a divestiture of profits from any current or previous employment if we're found in violation. So Vesti needs to decide which solution we want to take, but we have two proposals. The first is to license an in-house agent and retain full commissions, and the second one would be to outsource the work to an existing agency. The second risk is information and data privacy law. So data privacy is regulated at both the federal and state levels. The current California rule is the CCPA, soon to be replaced by the CPRA. So it's important to make sure we're complying at both the federal and state level, because not only could we potentially be liable to the regulatory agencies, but also to consumers. So Vesti will also want to create a privacy policy that meets the industry standards. And finally, we want to heighten our cybersecurity and guard against hacking, especially with encrypted servers or cryptocurrency to help with our public blockchain. Perfect. So the final and the most intimidating one is federal securities law. So federal securities violations can result in hefty fines or imprisonment. And the Securities Act requires that a sale of security either be registered or exempted. Also, with NFTs, they're a little murky because they are very new, but we foresee that our version of the NFTs will be covered as a security. And so our solution is to take a more aggressive approach with compliance with the NFTs, but a more flexible one with our own fundraising as a startup and take full advantage of the existing exemptions to retain as much of our funds as possible in our early critical years, such as Section 4, Regulation D, and 144A. But ultimately, we want to balance our business decisions with our legal decisions so that we make sure Vesti is successful.
And conscious of time, we're very quick through our financial projections. Total addressable market, the actual spend this year is expected to be between $13 and $16 billion in advertising spend on influencers. Over the last 5 years, there's been an increase of 41% on average year on year. And based off these projections, we expect our total addressable market in year one to be around $8 billion. Briefly as well, our burn rate is expected to be around $19,000 in year one, up to $500,000 in year 5. We expect to be cash flow positive by year 5, and our projected EBITDA in year 5 is 1.5. Our sources of capital, we've amended slightly from our business plan. We've decided to increase the equity relative to the amount of debt in our plan. And in year one, we're going to focus on building the ground level of our business, which includes building out the app, getting influencers on the platform, and hiring talent. In years 2 and 3, we want to increase that. And yeah.
Okay, yeah. So then we'll definitely look to capitalize on our first mover advantage, capture that TAM that Ed mentioned of $8 billion in year 1. And then we hope to have around 45 influencers by year 3 under management to feed into our best users, and we hope to be cash flow positive by year 5. So, thank you all very much.
Within this market, and again, and this is new for me, so you'll have to sort of educate me, but with respect to each of the influencers deciding what's going into the NFT, how is that going to work? Is that like a one-on-one with influencer? How is that portrayed to the investor? And how are you going to ensure that whatever it is that's supposed to be included, rights, et cetera, are actually going to be? And then as a follow-on to that, what happens, or what do you have sort of thought process, plan, et cetera, with respect to any influencers that sort of go, rogue or that take a huge downturn and it might have a very negative effect on your brand, et cetera?
So regarding the first question about what goes into the NFT, so we will converse with each influencer to decide what kind of rights they're willing to give up. Influencers vary so much, they're extremely diverse. So one platform may want to give us some IP rights so people can use their photographs to sell items or make money off of their brand, which is very common use of NFTs nowadays. And some brands that are more personal, like the Addison Rae that we're talking about, may want to give up a % of revenue or something like that, if anything at all, because there's always going to be some sort of worth for the NFT. If the influencer gets super popular, presumably it will be able to be sold for more money, similar to the way equity is valued, in addition to the way our algorithms are compute value. So we'll definitely work with each influencer, and then within the smart contracts, it's able to automatically procure where revenue is coming from and where it is going. So all of this, it can't be changed per se, so we're going to need to kind of converse about base level items that we're going to want to contain inside the NFT, because that's going to stay there unless we change the NFT. So presumably it'll be automatically able to give these sums of money, whether it be a cryptocurrency or cash through new software. So we'll definitely discuss that with influencers.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah. So yeah, and for part 2, I think that in any investment, there's a level of risk that goes into it. And I think that when you consider the kind of user that we envision investing in these influencers, they're not going to be betting their life savings on one influencer going viral. I think that it's more like you're betting on a startup. And I think that you're going to have to diversify a little bit. And there's risk in any investment. Like, any company could engage in malfeasance and go bankrupt overnight. So I don't see how it's much different than that. But I think that people will have a good sense of what they're investing in because they can actually do their own research on that influencer and see what they've done, see where they think they're going to do, and go from there.
We're also going to have safeguards and provisions in our contracts with the influencers, so we'll say that if your profit margins take a downturn to X%, then maybe we don't work with them on the platform anymore. So these are all things that we're going to be able to foresee in our contracts when we make those agreements and partnerships with the influencers. Mm-hmm. So we'll definitely have some safeguards for that.
Yeah, in addition to exclusivity.
I have a follow-on to that, but then my own question. Are you choosing these influencers, or is there an application process, or anybody can be on the platform?
Yes, we're definitely going to be choosing and going through very rigorous application processes because it's going to be very important, the micro-influencers that we choose, because in the first year we're going to have at most, I think, 3 influencers. So we're going to pour all of our resources into ensuring that these influencers will grow. And over the years, we'll take on more influencers as we gain popularity and a rapport. But initially, we're going to be very stringent about the types of numbers that they're seeing right now and how they've grown thus far and the reason why they're not able to scale without our resources, et cetera.
Can you then tell me more about this brand management team that you will have that will help these influencers become bigger?
Yes, definitely.
So yeah, basically, it's kind of a hybrid concept between a traditional talent agency like a CAA and a kind of an incubator for a tech company. So they'll be managing the creative and the commercial aspects of their business. So say you're an influencer that has 10,000 followers and you want to grow it to 100,000 followers. The brand management team will have business people that are experienced in that industry, such as former CAA talent reps that have managed influencers and know the business, and they can help connect them to other people in this business that will help them. So people that can help write, edit, produce their content, filming locations, what have you. But basically, there's the sky's the limit on the kind of services they could offer. It's kind of an immersive, all-inclusive experience.
And we are connected to a lot of current influencers and managers and people who have had a lot of experience in this entertainment industry, both on the influencer side and from the traditional agency side. So our advisory board will provide a lot of the pointers for us of where to allocate resources and what brands to collaborate with. We're going to work with certain corporations in order to provide brand partnerships for influencers, etc.
Do you have these people on your brand management team already, or it's a...
This is the Vessi team
This
right
is
now.
pending funding.
Yeah.
So pending funding, we have people that we've been in communication with, both influencers, former talent agents, and people really involved in the industry, but this is all pending funding.
So who do these people, these resources, they're human capital, right?
Yes.
Essentially. Yeah.
Right. What do they get? How do you entice them to be part of your team? I'm an influencer right now. I need help. I need a build. Why do I go to you? Who are you going to take me to, and why are they going to help?
Yeah, it depends in what way they're going to want to either invest or some individuals who may put money into it and be equity partners and therefore be shareholders in our corporation and be able to share in the profits that way and grow with us. Otherwise, people on our board of directors, so either have people join formally on the board of directors, have a say in the company and join the company in some formal way, eventually in an employment situation. But we have a lot of connections who are just interested in being advisors, truthfully, a lot of former professors and mentors and people who have just expressed general connection, help.
Or will they get paid by the influencer? The influencer is now collecting money from the people that want to invest in the influencer. Are they paying the money over to these resources that you're providing to them?
To the influencer themselves, you're asking?
Yeah, are they paying for the agency? Are they paying for the marketing help? Are they paying for all the different?
Are you
Well,
paying
that's
out of
coming
the
from our
profit?
Right, so the influencer will pay for their own marketing costs, so essentially we're facilitators. We will facilitate those interactions, but the influencer will be contracting with those other third parties with help from Vesti, because Vesti's users and investors will funnel funds into the app and into the influencers' accounts that'll help them both fund the resources they need to fund, and then also the brand management team will help connect them with those people too.
And with respect to the people that are now going to invest in the influencers,
Right.
how do you price what they're paying in? And is there any limit to how much money can be raised?
I wouldn't say there's a limit to how much money is going to be raised in that sense, but we intend to create an algorithm that will basically create a valuation of the influencer based on how many followers they have, what their engagement is like, etc. So that's a base model price to buy in, and then over time the algorithm will pretty much serve as a point of reference for what the influencer will be valued at, just like kind of the stock market, I guess. But at the end of the day, the beauty of using NFTs is they can be sold for as much money as someone is willing to buy it for. So, people recently sold an art piece, an NFT art piece for $69 million and previously had never made money selling NFTs. So it is somewhat speculative about how much money can be made, but that's kind of the beauty of it and where all of this opportunity lies.
Okay, thank you very much. Next up is Team Orthe.
So hi, my name is Crystal and I am the COO of Orphe, a company dedicated to creating a therapeutic dental patch in order to treat periodontitis. So, would you want to kiss this mouth? No, I don't think so. And what you just saw there was an example of severe periodontitis, or what you guys may know is as gum disease. And half of you guys in this room today, or about 4 billion people globally, will eventually have this disease. And the reason why this number is so high is because most people neglect it or leave it untreated until it becomes an issue and it starts to impact their normal daily lives. And once you get to this point, though, you will have to go through painful, invasive procedures called scaling and root planing 2 times a year until it's all gone. But after the scaling and root planing, what they'll do is they place antibiotics, and this is where the problem starts to occur. So they'll place the antibiotics into your dental pocket, but it's just sitting there. If you were to floss or eat chips, it all comes out. And the biggest issue with that is that it's an incomplete dosage of antibiotic, which commonly is known as it can create a superbug. And the worst part is, treatment is expensive and typically paid out of pocket, as 85% of patients go without any dental insurance. So we here at Orphe have created SalPatch, a therapeutic microarray patch for local delivery of antibiotics straight to your gum. It is painless and easy to use. If you know how to use a Band-Aid, then you know how to use SalPatch. And it provides an earlier treatment option because we're delivering the antibiotics straight into your gums instead of having it sit into a pocket that develops with your periodontitis. And also, we have seen 70% tissue regeneration in our rat animal models already. And to use SalPatch, a dental professional will apply the patch to your gums. After a couple minutes, the patch itself will dissolve, and it leaves behind antibiotics that degrade over the course of 2 weeks. And this antibiotic not only has the ability to kill the bacteria, but also manage your inflammation. And after multiple rounds of treatment, you'll be left with happy, healthy gums. So our patch may be small, but it comes with big advantages. Our innovative design ensures that there's minimal to no leakage of antibiotics, as well as high local retention. It's easy to apply, and it has easy storage. And our tunable drug load allows us to accommodate for every level of the disease. And currently, our technology is patent pending, and we are negotiating options with UCLA. And current solutions on market are inadequate. Low patient compliance and limited delivery across the physical barrier results in low retention. And as you can see here, very little is done for regeneration. The only thing currently on the market is an herbal patch. And also, all the current products on market have super low retention. And Arustin is the gold standard and has been the gold standard for the past 20 years. And even now, current products in the clinical pipeline only focus on molecular mechanisms, but there's nothing to be done on delivery. So SalPatch is a superior choice for adjunct treatment to gum disease, because we not only have the ability to deliver antibiotics, but we can also promote regeneration while retaining a sustained drug release and improving local retention. And we can do this, and we believe that we can become the next leaders in the market.
The market for treatments related to gum disease is certainly growing. A recent study done by FNF Research predicted that in the next 4 years, the market would grow to, in the U.S., grow to about 1 billion, which is good news for Orphe, because that gives us access to a market of 79 million if we're able to treat 2.5 million patients. Is this something that Orphe and our SalPatch could do in this market? Certainly. If you ignore all other value propositions, and you just go based on price alone, Arrestin, which is currently the gold standard for adjunct treatment, it costs an annual basis for each patient, costs 4 times more than Salpatch. In order to get to these 2.5 million patients, we rely on a tried and true business model, which is being a manufacturer and supplier to large distributors. This allows ORFA to partner with CMOs and use our competencies to help them scale and produce new iterations of Salpatch or change dosing, for example. For some of the other kind of stakeholders in this chain, there's value generated at every step. For distributors, there's a new product offering, something that they have not seen for 10 years. Okay? For dentists, they can save time. Also, because of the nature of dentistry, they may have access to increased margins depending on how much they charge for applying the Salpatch. And ultimately, patients have better clinical outcomes and a painless experience. So before thinking too much about the future, let's talk about where we're at right now. Earlier this year, we completed our first Salpatch iteration clinical trial in rat that provided some very useful data. We've just completed the second preclinical trial in rat, and that data is currently being processed. In the short term, so probably the next couple of months, we need to incorporate so that we can begin to reach out to some CMOs, transact with them, and then also apply for SBIR grant. Additionally, there's some topics that we need to cover for licensing since the IP is owned by the UC system.
Yes, so the University of California submitted the provisional application for patent in the US in 2019 and the international application in 2020. ORFA plans to use Salpatch technology based on an exclusive license from the university. One of the founders of ORFA is the inventor of Salpatch technology and has the unique knowledge of the manufacturing process and the application of the patch. We expect it to be one of the key factors influencing the university's decision to license the technology to us. Also, we plan to protect non-patented information regarding the manufacturing process as a trade secret, and we plan to sign confidentiality agreements and restrict access to this information. ORFA also plans to increase the chances of successfully obtaining an Fda approval by using UCLA resources and assistance.
The ORFA team is formed by experts in the field of bioengineering, biomaterials, and drug delivery. We're also supported by experts, advisors in dentistry, med device, pharma, as well as just business general entrepreneurship. Our group has also reached out for contributing work from students at UCLA's Anderson School of Business, and also here the UCLA School of Law. Last year we also won this Big Ideas competition, and we've also been accepted into the National NSF I-Core program. So, gum disease is a huge problem affecting almost half of the adult population worldwide. We have a solution. We have a team with the know-how, and we are here today to ask for $1 million in funding that would be used to basically power through in order to get to an IND submission, which is a submission that's made to the FDA to say, hey, we have a new drug here, and you should take a look and potentially have a new product. Some of the funding would be used to bring in much needed expertise in regulatory and compliance, and to enter and complete our next preclinical study in a larger mammal, which is called mini pig. You've all been a great audience, and we would be glad to answer or address any questions you may have.
cost of making the product itself? Like, and what's the pricing mechanism for whether it's going to CMO, the bigger company, or going just directly to periodontist themselves? What's the plan ultimately?
I can speak about the pricing. So our pricing is based on a CDC study that was done for basically mass production of micro patches for deploying vaccine. And essentially their cost to manufacture the patch itself was estimated to be about 57 cents. That did not include the vaccine or the drug. However, our product uses essentially just chemical drugs that can be synthesized, and they're all FDA approved, and so are some of the materials that form the patch. How we end at a final price is a little more complicated, but essentially everyone takes a bite along the chain. So going through a distributor, we would have to sell at wholesale. They would then put a markup in order to distribute, sell to dentists and DSOs. They then apply another markup in order to place it on a patient. So based on that, if you compare it to Arestin, which is sold to dental offices at approximately $9 to $12, they then place it per site anywhere from $40 to $75. These costs can increase very quickly.
Do you have contracts with Thong Li or with Magdi Hassani, who seem to be very important to this product and to your going forward? Are they part of your team, or how are you
Yes,
utilized
so Madi and Song Li, they're all, Song Li is going to be on our board of advisors, and Madi is another co-founder who will also be intensely participating in our startup as we incorporate.
I see. And once you, what are the plans to move it from testing in rats to testing in humans?
Okay. Yeah. So first, we are right now redoing a second test in rats to just ensure stability and storage. The next step after that is to go in mini pigs in order to optimize the safety, dosage, and efficacy. And then after that, we would submit our IND package to the FDA, and then after that, we would be able to start our human clinical trials. And is there another half that you want to discuss, or all the paths to the clinical trials, correct?
No, okay.
Okay, yes.
Well, one thing to mention about clinical trials for this type of drug is that they would actually be very short, because one of the challenges a lot of times in clinical trials is finding appropriate patients, convincing them to join the trial, et cetera. And when we compared it to, for example, the Arestin clinical trials, so many people suffer from gum disease that it's easy to find trial participants, and also the length of the trial, they're pretty short. And you can very quickly get results. So whoever's overviewing the study can get results compared to if we're talking about a cancer therapy.
Interesting product. I'm interested to know that you talked about microneedling. The microneedle manufacturing is not mature yet, which seems to be a very important part of the product. So what is your path here?
So, so the industry as a whole is not mature, which is part of why we're trying to find the right CMO that we can help to scale up. Also being a part of that process, we've developed in-house our own capabilities and know-how on how to manufacture microneedles. But again, to get to the point where we're mass producing microneedles, we still see that it's going to be 5 to 6 years out, and hopefully industry has caught up at that point.
And on that note, what will how protectable is your patent against some of these competitors hearing about it and having more funding, being bigger, being able to take their product and provide sort of what's missing, or sort of bring in what you're providing?
Well, I can start. So the university indicated I think most of the possible modifications of this patch and also most of the possible uses of this patch in the patent filed in 2019. So I believe that like most of the ways known to us as of now, they are already in the process of protection.
Yeah. And to clarify that a little bit more, we have already patented, or our patent pending is covering the size of the needles, the shape of the needles, the materials of the needles, and the usage of antibiotics as well as cytokines. So we have covered essentially all of the potential usages and materials and the sizes and shapes that you could use a microneedle for.
We have more time? How many of you are going to be full-time on this project?
So I'm not going to pull it back up. But our COO, Cher, and I are going to be full-time. Madi will also be as well as part-time. And then we hope to also have Raul on the team part-time and or full-time as well. So initially for the first year, it's going to only be about 3 to 4 people, but then later on we do plan to expand our team because we understand that we need to supplement our team because we are going to be going through clinical trials within the next couple years.
And what will UCLA be asking for when you sit down to talk to them about their rights and what they're going to license you to do?
I'm sorry, can you repeat your question?
Yeah. Basically, you say that you have to negotiate with the university. Okay, what do you think they're going to be asking for, and where do you think those negotiations are going to wind up?
Generally, so I know that UCLA has somewhat of a boilerplate model for licensing. Since one of the people on the team is an inventor, they kind of get first dibs on license agreement. And I know that typically UCLA will expect royalties, and they will also expect that we, in good faith, try to actually move the technology along to get it to patients.
I think that's all we have time for questions. But thank you so much for all of your questions and all of your feedback.
Now we have a short break, about a 10-minute break. Please come back at 6:12 so that we can get started with the second half of our competition. Okay, everyone, let's get back into Team B.
All right, you good? All right, hello. I'm super excited to be here today. I'm Juan Banch, one of the founders of B-Test, a COVID-19 rapid diagnostics device for small businesses, with applications even beyond with the flu or cancer research. So let's say you're a small employer, a restaurant, or a hotel. You bring in these boxes, they came in delivered. You spread them out to your employees. They blow through them, and within 5 to 15 minutes, they get their results. Of course, testing is only as reliable as you do it often. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they recycle the pod, they put another one in, they blow through it, and your company's safe. Especially right now. You don't have to go expense time off for your employees to go get tested, or you get them at the office spending their time there. Especially with the staff shortages, one more person or one less person could make a big difference. Now you've all been there. COVID is everywhere, and one big problem is testing. One of the big ones is inaccurate. You have rapid antigen tests, which have a high degree of false negatives. If not, if you're using the PCR, I'm sure some of you have used the UCLA one, which takes 24 to 48 hours to actually get your results. And even then, sometimes it's uncomfortable if you have to do a PCR no swab. Lastly, you've got some that detect it too late. You actually can be transmitting the disease before you've detected it. And then you have the difficulty of new variants. These are a lot of difficulties, and some tests cover 2 or 3, but ours covers all of them. It's accurate. We've tested it, and it matches the PCR gold standard. It's fast. It takes 5 to 15 minutes while being accurate. It's comfortable. What could be easier than blowing air through a straw? It's versatile, detects all the new variants have been tested, and it's at early stage because of the technology that allows this to happen, as well as being point of care, no lab testing. Anywhere you are, you can actually use this device. And because the electronics are embedded, you've got some LEDs that are inexpensive and show you whether it's positive or negative. And finally, at the scale we're talking about, it's down to $20 per device, the reusable device, and $5 per pod. Plus, we have a patent pending to ensure we stay competitive. You could ask, how is this possible? Well, we have one of our co-founders, Daniel, who through his soon-to-be constituted spin-off has developed this pioneering technology. Recently, they pre-published this paper that outlines the technology that makes this happen. You're not worried about testing for the RNA, or you're not worried about testing antigens that take a while to develop in your body. What we're doing is detecting for the presence of COVID directly. And you might ask, how do you actually do that? Well, exactly the same way your body takes in COVID. There's a protein that accepts the COVID, and then it's in your body. We take that protein, make some modifications, put it on a chip, and you can detect directly. And the best part, we talked about a protein. You change the protein, it's flu or cancer. You can make it versatile. Now, I'm also making some huge claims given the difficulty COVID has left the world in. That's why we've already tested this with patients in Italy. You see it right there, we have our version 1, which is in the picture. And right here, I can show you the version 2 that we've been working on. Doesn't have the expensive electronics to make it happen, but I'm hoping no one here has COVID. At the same time, it's accurate. The test that we did, side by side with PCR, and the results matched. Finally, it's easily approvable because we're still in the window of the EUA 510K, the FDA's emergency use authorization for COVID-19. Now, it's important to talk about the financials, so I'll give you a brief overview of one example. There's been 3 billion tests worldwide since the start of the pandemic, and of course, that continues to grow. However, let's narrow it down to the US, where there's 10.5 billion weekly tests, and around 1 million of those happen in the hospitality industry. And why are we targeting that? Because the hospitality industry, as I mentioned, really needs the people to be in person, as opposed to a computer science startup right now. And if you lose one more person because of the staff shortages, it can mean big differences. Now we're talking around 10 to 15 companies that we want to start with. That would be our beachhead market, and we would climb up to bigger players like Marriott or McDonald's or something like that, where we would be able to deploy 20,000 weekly tests. And you may ask also, is the need there? Well, we've actually run some preliminary ads, and what we found is shocking. We put ads for COVID testing for employers, COVID testing for companies, and the people that click on them are people that are searching COVID tests for themselves. Right now, the weight is put on the employees. If we can bridge this gap between employees and employers, I think we have a match. Now, this is $7 million in potential revenue in LA alone. With the 20,000 weekly tests that we were talking about, that's 1 million yearly tests. And with $7 cost per device, $7 costs per test, which is the pod and the reusable device spread over several tests, that's 7 million in potential revenue. Of course, to get there, it's going to be hard, and we acknowledge that. That's why we're right now in the prototyping phase, and we're hoping to get money from investors in order to continue these tests and make it enough so that it's reliable. The FDA is not going to listen to 10 or 20 tests. They're going to listen to 500 tests. After that, we can move on to engineering and manufacturing, where we have already some partners that we use for prototyping. And we can grow this up, as well as getting to know people through conventions, trade shows, or even word of mouth, in order to know where to start for our possible companies. Of course, growing that afterwards, we talked about the Marriotts or the McDonald's that we want to partner with, and we'd be looking to talk to chief human resource officers in order to make deals like this possible. And think about it. Once you get to that big scale, the economies of scale make this cheap enough that anyone in the world could use this device. You can have it around, and it could be testing anywhere you want. There's no need for lab. And finally, it can be flu or cancer. There's a lot of possibilities out here. To do this, though, we have to crush the competition. And that's why, let me remind you, we're bringing the benefits of the antigen and antibody test with the PCR. They're fast, comfortable, and they give quick results, but they don't have the importance, which is the early stage detection, as well as detecting all the COVID variants. And to do this, of course, we need a strong team. That's what you see right here behind us. We have 2 students from the UCLA School of Law, Diana, who is a JD candidate, and Brandon, a JD MBA candidate, as well as 2 engineering students, who are Michael, our software engineer, and Ashwin, our hardware engineer, who puts it together with the electronics to make it happen. And I wrap it all together with the mechanical to bring in the breathalyzer soon enough to you so that anyone can use it. Of course, we also have to acknowledge the founding team, which brings Richard Alhani, who is a PhD graduate from the University of Wuppertal, has worked in Teledyne, and is already a successful founder, the CEO of Alcatera. Lastly, we have Daniele, which, as I have mentioned, is the one who has made all the IP possible. He's an associate professor at Mark Polytechnic, and also an established researcher at several others. So without further ado, I think there's another important thing to talk about, which is all the legal aspects. And for that, I'll pass it to Diana.
Thank you, Juan. As he said, my name is Diana Yan. I'm one of the law students on this team. First in mind is FDA approval, right? We'll be applying for emergency use authorization. We have good precedent and reason to believe that our device falls within this emergency use authorization. I have template guidance from the FDA for the sensitivity test and specificity test we need to pass, and I can give you a copy if you'd like. And moving on to the IP, there are 2 patents at hand. There's a biologic patent that Juan was explaining that one of our co-founders has patent pending through his university. And there's a patent that we want to file, that's the apparatus patent, the one that can be used with multiple biologic patents potentially. We currently have an oral agreement with our among co-founders, for an exclusive, mutually exclusive IP swap, wherein we get to be an exclusive licensee of the biologic patent, when he and his spinoff, the co-founder, gets to be exclusive licensee of our apparatus. Generally speaking, we will incorporate as a Delaware corporation, and we have proposed bylaws, proposed articles of incorporation, and other ancillary documents associated. Lastly, we're looking to hire in the summer of 2022, this summer, and we have employee offer letters and confidential information and investment assignments, copies of which I have with me today. Thank you so much for your time and attention, and if you have any questions, please contact us at VTest.
So you're in a field right now that obviously has gotten a tremendous amount of attention over the last couple of years. There's a lot of well-financed companies in the field, as well as universities and labs that are trying to perfect tests. So how are you going to distinguish yourself while you're trying to raise money from all these others? Because I've even read about some of them that do breath tests.
I think one big thing is actually the one you mentioned about breath. Just to mention briefly, that's actually something that is a positive for us because it makes EUA 510K easier. And the one we read about, came out recently, about a couple of days ago, and they have like a suitcase size thing. So I think that the importance there is talking about the convenience, right? This is something that is tiny and is easy to use. Once you compare it to, breathalyzer, which people are raving over, that is a luggage size, I think that gives you an advantage.
And to add on to that, the only other breath-based test for COVID-19 is the Inspect IR test, our competitor. It's the size of a suitcase, and it must be used with the supervision of a health professional. So we think our test is a lot more attractive.
I have a question about FDA approval. So once, because of emergency use, once you have FDA approval for that, if you were going to take this for testing any other virus, what is that process like? Does that sort of give you some sort of a headway, or is that easy just thinking through to the extent that testing for COVID becomes sort of less and less important as time goes on, as we saw whenever there's a dip, the testing just kind of drops. Almost, it's ridiculous the difference between that versus when it's being required. But the other uses, especially for other viruses and ultimately other diseases, is obviously great. But what's the FDA approval process there?
So the same mechanism will be used, which is breath-based. The FDA is concerned with bodily fluids for the most part. So once we have our first apparatus approved, it should be really easy to get other biologic processes approved. These have to redo the studies to show the same efficacy, specificity, sensitivity.
Yeah, and recently, looking at trends in testing, it's hovered pretty constantly around 700,000 tests daily in the United States for the last 6 or 7 months. So there is consistency in testing for COVID specifically, even as cases have dropped off recently.
Can you tell me more about whoever's relationship is with, is it Richard and Danielle?
Yeah, I've been working with them because I used to work at the Alcatera company, which I started since in freshman year. So I've been, developing that relationship since then. And then from Richard's friend, which is Danielle, is how we got together and connected and basically made this happen.
And this exchange that you have, is it written or is it still oral?
We currently have an oral agreement, but they're evidenced by writing. We have emailed back and forth, not only with Danielle, but with the university itself.
So go back again a little bit, and I apologize for asking again, but how do you know it works?
That's a great question, and actually, if I could. So this is a little excerpt from the paper where you can see the test that they've actually done. And you can see, essentially, you do a blind test with this, literally the device you're holding in your hands. They put some droplets and they test with COVID or with a blank sample. And then you can measure the difference, right? So on this different device, you see on the left-hand side, the spike shows you when there was COVID and where there wasn't COVID. And you can see the difference that tells you it matched. Additionally, this is the most recent work that they've done, which talks about all the different variants that they've tested. And the differences that you can see, which essentially say, with 95% confidence interval, that there is COVID or not.
Well, what's the percentage with the antigen test?
Come again?
The antigen test, the at-home test that we take, what's the rate there compared to this?
Yeah, so it varies for test to test, but generally it's in the 60 to 70% range for the antigen tests. And PCR tests are generally in the 97, 98% accuracies. So these match with the PCR gold standard, so significantly more accurate than the rapid tests that you see on the market.
And is the failure rate on the antigen test, the rapid test, is it false positives or false negatives? Or does it matter? Is it both?
That's a good question. From my understanding, it is false negatives, which is what matters more. You have COVID and it wasn't detected. Because it's either a variant that it didn't detect or something else like that.
Questions?
Is there more time? Yeah. Oh,
No.
okay.
Good presentation. Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question. So operationally, you were saying that you would go as like an employee into work and then flow and then see if you're positive. But wouldn't it be better if they took it at home before coming into the office or the restaurant? There was a part in your presentation or your business plan that you talked about the device can be connected and synchronize the store data and send test results. Can it send test results, or is it just storing data in the device?
Yeah, so this is additional functionality that we can add to increase the value proposition further, is to have an internet-connected device, an IoT device, wherein the results that you've taken can be uploaded in a HIPAA-compliant manner, so that your employer can track across their employees when was the last known negative test results. You can test by different geographies or things like that to monitor the state of health in your employee population.
And to the first part, definitely, that's true. And I think when I gave the example is, you're giving them out first, and of course then they can do it wherever they need to.
How far along are you on this sending data part of the technology?
Yeah, so currently the way that it works is the data is collected and it sends an email to you. But it would be very easy, it's software engineering that we're very experienced with to build an application, a mobile application or a web application to build dashboards like that. That's like 3 months of software development.
And the HIPAA compliant.
There are cloud-based services which allow the HIPAA-compliant data transfers that we're experienced with as well.
And then when you're blowing into this, is there like certain, like if you blow a certain amount, do you have to do certain, like, is there certain things that you have to do or follow instructions for it to actually turn out accurate?
Yeah, definitely. So I think the importance there is pressure. How much are you blowing? Because essentially you're throwing particles out and the device has to detect them. So we do have, we're embedding a pressure sensor in order to give you feedback. Have you blown hard enough, essentially?
Got it. So it will actually tell you if you've not done it properly, so
Correct.
that you don't think that you have a different result.
Yeah.
Right.
Awesome. Sounds like that's about time. Thank you so much.
Next up is Team Sports Swap.
Hi, we are Sports Swap, and we are here to discuss the new era of safe, commission-free sports betting. We intend to be the Robin Hood of sports betting and to lead this new revolution.
So I don't know how many sports fans we have in the room. Sorry. I don't know how many sports fans we have in the room, but if you watched any sports over the last year or taken the New York Metro, it's impossible to escape. We're being bombarded with ads from sportsbooks, MGM, DraftKings, FanDuel, Caesars, etc. Now, why are these companies spending so much on user acquisition marketing? Well, they're trying to differentiate an otherwise undifferentiated product. And the only way they can do that is by throwing money at the user acquisition problem. Now, the model that these companies are using allows them to sustain this high level of spend because once they get you in the system, they charge extremely high commissions in order to place a bet. Now, they're using the traditional house model that positions the house against its users. Right? The more you lose, the more they make. This in turn creates warped incentives where there's no transparency. They're not providing. They have no incentive to educate users, to provide portfolio tracking, performance metrics, etc. Rather, they want to keep users in the blind and continue to bankroll on the high commissions. Unless someone comes along and challenges their model with a new model, they have no incentive to change. That's where SportsSwap comes in. So SportsSwap, rather than acting as a counterparty to our users' bets, acts as a facilitator between two users wanting to make a bet with one another on the opposite sides of the bet. Because we're not taking risk in this scenario, we're able to offer these bets at a low, consistent transaction fee of 2.5%, which on average, for the average user, would save $400 a year. What this in turn allows us to do is to present things in a very clear and concise manner. You can see our spread betting page on the upper left here, and you can see how clear it is to understand. We do away with minus 110, plus 265, which is traditional odds. If I had to guess, most of the room doesn't know what that means, and that's really core to our point here. We know that there's a vast market from our user interviews of people that want to try sports betting, are interested in getting involved, but are intimidated by the jargon, don't understand odds, don't understand the presentation of it, and that's really the market that we want to go after. Furthermore, we're able to, with this, because we're not working against our users, we're open to having a free flow of information, right? And that includes providing those portfolio tracking, that
portfolio tracking, those performance metrics, as well as a social underpinning. We want to allow for the free flow of information between individuals from our beta product, as well as user interviews. We've come to understand that social feature is in high demand and will lead to user stickiness over time.
Thank you, Justin. So a couple of years ago, our founder, Keaton, started a Discord chat with him and a couple of friends, which they started because they were tired of playing the traditional house model and getting these high VIG, which is essentially commissions taken off the top. This Discord chat quickly grew, but was capped at 1,000 users due to the organic growth. But to date, over 5 million has been exchanged on this app, on this Discord chat, and over 40,000 wagers have been placed. So the opportunity was apparent. Sports bettors are looking for an alternative to the predatory house model that currently exists. This begs the question, why enter the market now? First, sports betting in the US is still in its early stages. Existing operators and investors haven't had the opportunity to analyze what the future of the market could look like. Furthermore, both supply and demand conditions are primed for new entrants to enter into the market, which Melise will touch upon shortly. So in order to execute a successful launch of our app, our team has decided to conduct a 2-stage phased rollout approach, where in years 1 through 2, we will target Tennessee, Arizona, and Colorado. And then in years 3 through 5, we will target Virginia, Maryland, and Ohio. This 2-staged approach will allow our team to gauge market volume, as well as smooth out any operational issues that may arise during the course of our launch. Broadly speaking, we've chosen a selection of states based on 3 criteria. The first being geographic differentiation from our competitors, the second being market attractiveness and key demographics, and the third being whether we've established good working relationships with the regulatory authorities in those states, and whether they've provided us with clear paths to licensing and or further assurances that our application will be approved. More specifically, SportsSwap is looking to launch in Tennessee in Q1 of 2023 to coincide with the NFL playoffs and the Super Bowl, which accounts for a significant portion of U.S. sports betting volume in the year.
So the total addressable market right now for online sports betting is over $9 billion, and in our phase 1 states, we expect the serviceable addressable market to reach $890 million by the end of 2022. This market is growing exponentially. Goldman Sachs and other investors and analysts have projected that by 2025, the volume of bets are going to be at $180 billion, which would translate to over $35 billion in revenue. We're targeting long-term and new bettors, and our appeal to both these categories places us quite competitively. So the competitive landscape can be divided into 2 business models. We have the house model that Justin had described a little bit earlier, and the more recently emerging commission-free exchange model. So the house model, you have the large players that you may have heard of, DraftKings, FanDuel. They take the high commission that Justin was talking about and typically acquire customers by throwing out promos and other discounts. Then you have the commission-free exchange model, and this is an emerging model. There are currently only 2 firms in this category. There's Wager and there's Sporttrade, and of them, only one has launched, and that's Wager. This isn't a winner-take-all market. We believe that there are going to be 2 to 3 key players, and we think that we are well-positioned to be one of those players. Sporttrade targets sophisticated bettors. So a sophisticated bettor is Keaton. Would look like Keaton. He's been doing this his whole life. He knows the gambling jargon. He wants to make money. He's concerned about the best odds. And then they're appealing to this profile. And then there's Wager, which is more about the social aspect. Gambling, waging can be isolating, can be exclusive, exclusionary. So they're really focused on building the community and the entertainment aspect. But we're really unique because this is the first time that both is going to be on one app. So a bettor like Keaton and I can both use SportsSwap and enjoy it. I placed my first bet for March Madness, and I was going for the thrill, for the excitement, for the live game. I am not going to ever learn the jargon. I'm not motivated to learn it, but I think it's fun. And Keaton gets the best odds, and so that's why it's our app.
Yeah, so to talk about the marketing strategy in a little bit more detail, we're going to use a multi-channel marketing 5-pronged approach. We're going to do social media marketing, paid search, in-person events. We're also going to do promotional signups, which are industry standard. Essentially, what we're betting on is focused on this local and community marketing. These social features are going to create this kind of virality. That's what we saw in the beta app. That's what happened in the Discord invite-only. People were inviting their friends. They were just betting with each other. A couple months ago, actually, I ran into someone. I was betting in our Discord, and someone said, "Oh my gosh, I'm in this group." And we actually looked at our chat history, what bets we had, and that's the type of organic growth, the friendships that are created in this app that we think can differentiate us. Looking at our financials, we're projecting first year launch in 2023 of 1.2 million. That's only around 2,500 users. The annual user revenue per year is pretty high in this industry. We're going to be investing most of our revenue into the business to scale and hopefully break even by year 3. In year 5, we're projecting 62 million to be live in 6 states and around 120,000 users. Our capital raise, we have raised $500,000 committed to this point. We need to raise $2.5 million. Obviously, the biggest hurdle to this business are the licensing. We've had in-depth conversations with all of the regulatory bodies, and if we can meet these funding goals, we are confident we will be able to acquire the license in Tennessee to launch our app in February 2023. We have a rockstar management team here, a very diverse team. We have 2 lawyers, technology experience, startup experience. We are lacking gambling and casino experience, so we've actually brought on one of the leaders at Betfair, which was acquired by FanDuel in Europe, to be a key advisor for us. We've also brought on some other key advisors who have experience launching tech companies, such as the founders of Tinder and the founder of Terra. Thank you guys very much.
What's the licensing required for a business like this within those states? And also, is there any federal sort of issues that come up, as far as, since it's not federally approved? And then what happens with the states? Like, how will you know what are you doing to keep it within those states?
Sure. First, to address the federal issues, the Wire Act, as you know, is still in effect. This doesn't apply to our model, though, because like DraftKings or FanDuel, you silo your operations within the state, so there's no necessity to send wire communications interstate. In terms of state licensing, there's basically 3 big hurdles we're going to have to figure out for this application process. That's insurance requirements, data warehousing requirements, and federal cash reserve requirements.
Yeah, and furthermore, to answer your question, so are you wondering, just to clarify, how the different state laws and the licensing requirements differ per state?
How burdensome they are,
mm-hmm.
and what's the cost sort of?
Yeah,
sure.
So typically the licensing, it's basically around $1 million per year. It varies by state, but that's around the average. Obviously, a state like New York has a much higher licensing requirement. California has been more around $10 million. But most of them are around $1 million. And when we first got into this, I'd say at the beginning, we were really afraid of the licensing and the licensing requirements. But as we met with those regulatory bodies, it's more just an issue of securing the necessary funding to purchase them. And so that's given us a lot of confidence that if we can actually meet our funding goal, we can acquire these licenses.
So picking up on that, first of all, could you explain the Wire Act to me a little bit more? And let's assume you have a license in Tennessee. All right, so I'm here in California. So you're telling me I cannot bet with you? Okay.
That's correct.
But today, could I bet with FanDuel, Barstools?
Not in California, no.
Not in California. Okay. So the Wire Act, how does that work?
Mm-hmm. So the Wire Act, essentially, it just prohibits the use of communications to facilitate sports betting across state lines. So the issue is if DraftKings wanted to allow someone from California to bet in New Jersey, that would be prohibited.
And with respect to the financial model that you're doing with just commissions, and you're not on either side of that, So does that mean with respect that if I am in the state where you are, and I want to bet on game X, or, you know, and they're playing team Y, then you have to have somebody betting on team Y to match, you need to match every bet.
Correct. Yeah, so we're very aware of the liquidity issue that can come up in this model. You know, our initial plan would be to seed it in the early phases with a limit. But you know, broadly, the other approach that we're going to take is to limit it to football to start. So in other words, you know, if we can narrow down the amount of bets available to spread bets in football with a bet limit, you know, we have a much higher chance of matching those bets.
Yeah, and I think we plan to also, I mean, Betfair, for example, in Europe, around 20 to 25% of bets in the mature market is bet in this exchange-like model. Just hasn't really started here. We predict that that's going to be the case in this market. And then, you know, if you can't match the other side of the bet, then you go and bet with the traditional house players.
So your one of your value props is that you have the best odds, but that's contingent on you being able to get the sports data, right? Where are you on that front?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've had conversations with Sport Radar, and we're quoted on, you know, how much it would cost per month to have that data to create the lines. And it's actually a much smaller portion of the cost item. But yeah, we've included that in our financial model. And typically all of the lines are around the same. Everyone's using the same Sport Radar as that's like the key player that's providing that data. Where we can kind of offer a better experience for our customers is we're not taking on any risk, so we don't need to charge this 10 to 20% commission. Since we're matching bets, we can charge a really low fee, and that's why the group chat went crazy and people were they're looking for this right now, this way to bet and save money betting, and it doesn't exist currently.
How is that group chat, like how is that involved? Like what's the relationship there, and are you utilizing something there?
Yeah, it was just a proof of concept, I think. Like the organic growth and the virality of it, it wasn't meant to be a business. I think that's when the light bulb went off. It's kind of just like our origin story that this is a problem in the market that's not being solved currently. And since we kind of embarked on this journey a year ago, we've seen Sport Trade and Wager raise money and are now trying to launch. I think they've raised around $100 million in capital.
And you said you already raised $500,000. Where have you raised that from, and is there any sort of relationship?
Yeah, it was an angel investor, a guy named Aaron Powell in Arizona, and it's contingent on us meeting our funding goals so that we have enough money to go acquire that license. Obviously, we're not gonna spend it until we have enough money to go out and acquire the license.
And just to follow up on that, on the investment side, I know with businesses like this, with betting and otherwise, where there's differences in state laws or you know, ethics concerns and such, investor space tends to be more limited. Have you looked at that, and do you have any thoughts on how that's going to affect you?
Yeah, definitely. I think we've discussed you know, that is a challenge for our business. I think, you know, this is technically like a sin business, as you would call it. But I think what we've seen resonate in the market is that we're really trying to create a safer way to bet. We're not gonna, you know, have any of these predatory practices. We really want to educate new users. We want to alert them when they're losing money. We're not gaining from them losing, so we're trying to make this a safe experience for our users. I think that's really helped us on our fundraising goal, and that's something we're really passionate about. I'm fine with a sophisticated user who's been gambling their whole life, like myself, losing money. I don't want Melise to think she's doing a risk-free bet on FanDuel and lose $500 on her first try. It just isn't a great experience for the customer, and I don't think it's right.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm Bo, this is Gus, Devin, and Brandon, and we're here to present Komu. So, right before business school started, I just spent a ton of money on GMAT tutors and business school consultants to get into this wonderful place. And I was ostensibly broke when I decided to take a vacation in Montana. 4 nights at a crappy Airbnb cost me half my rent for the month in Los Angeles. And I kept on thinking about how this asset was just sitting there unused, losing me value, when I could have maybe, put it on Airbnb, but of course I was prohibited as a renter from doing that. So then I thought, what would be the next best thing? And if I could have swapped with somebody in Montana that wanted to come to LA at the same time, that would have actually solved that problem. Ultimately, I started doing some research when we got back and found that there were these incumbent swapping platforms that existed, but they generally cater to older homeowners, when really it's those young cash-strapped millennials and Gen Zers who are most in need of a swapping platform. Right now we're experiencing the greatest revolution in travel since the advent of commercial flying. Those aren't my words, that's CEO of Airbnb, Brian Chesky, in the most recent earnings call. The problem is if you're one of Airbnb's 150 million users, which again, 51% of those are Gen Zers and millennials, can you afford to pay the average nightly rate of $140 for a 1-month stay to go somewhere else? That would accrue to $4,200 in incremental spend on top of the lost value of your place sitting there empty while you're away. So I met Gus in business school, who was also a nomadic worker, and we decided to build a lean version of the swapping platform. And Gus will go through the data and where we've come to date, but we learned that it was so hard to facilitate trust as we were building that out. Ultimately, we were building a network where we were trying to create trust for people that didn't know each other. And I have to say, through this competition, with these guys doing the great legal work that they did, and some recent changes in the market, it really revealed an even bigger opportunity. So rather than create trust initially, what we did is we revealed trust to your trusted network of people, the people that you know. So Komu is a private network for sharing your home. First and foremost, you get to discover and connect with your broad network across the globe to find out where your friends live, because ultimately the people that you trust to come and stay and watch your place while you're gone are the people you already know. And then we're going to show you how we open that up to even a broader network of friends of friends. And then from there, you have the ability to propose and list your place in exchange with, again, those trusted travelers that are already your friends. The size of this market is massive. There's $800 billion in lodging spend last year, and that's also growing. And if you look at the home exchange market, which again, we started with Komu being purely a home swapping platform, where now swapping is actually just a broader feature and even greater social network. But that market alone was growing at 8.3% compound annual growth and is slated to go even higher. To prove that there's demand for this, we just need to look back at what happened in December of 2021. A woman, Grace, posted on TikTok about how she wanted to do a holiday-like exchange. For those of you that don't know, it's the movie where the protagonists swap homes. And that trend went viral, generated 74 million views in just a couple weeks. And what was really cool is if you look at the top performers and influencers of that trend, they all went on their home swaps. And they found tremendous value. And it just goes to show you that if you have the broad network, if you have the connections and the people, you will go forth and engage in this new behavior of traveling and living. I'm going to hand it off to Gus.
Great. So I'll talk a little bit about where we've been and where we're going. So we've been working on this problem for about 1.5 years now. And when we started out, we actually started with an alpha last summer under a different name, Swapped. And with zero marketing spend, we got 900 unique visitors on our website in just a couple of months. 90 of them, 10%, actually signed up to be part of a swapping network. With, again, no advertising spend, 10% sign-up rate. One of the things we learned from that primarily was that, again, trust is this huge issue. People want to know that where they're going is, somebody they trust. And so in order to facilitate that, we came out with our beta in this past October, That's actually currently active now on our website, www.gokomu.com, just a little plug. We have 55 applications right now, 16 active members, and we've made a few swaps happen already, and there are a few more in the pipeline at the moment. You can see on the right a newsletter we're circulating amongst our members. Now the question is, where do we go from here? And how do we get that property liquidity that Bo was talking about, and actually that SportsSwap was talking about as well? And that is by a mobile app. So our idea is we are going to be creating a simple mobile MVP where Bo can text a link to his profile to me, that's the left screen there. I have to sign up for the app, put in some information about the city I live in, my contact info, etc. I can import my phone contacts and blast that out to others. I can see Bo's profile, I can see his availability, and message him and propose an exchange. And we believe this is a broader strategy to get a lot of volume. Now, how are we going to actually monetize that? That's by a freemium model. So again, the users who join, they can join for free, see their primary networks, import their contacts. For a $150 annual membership, again, one night at an Airbnb, you can become a paid member and go through a rigorous vetting process that includes background checks and identity verification through a third-party platform. Damage insurance policies, we are actually contracting with, or we're partnered with Verbo's insurance company to provide damage insurance on every swap, and we take half of that. 24/7 customer service, and again, like I said, this identity verification. So on to compliance and legal.
While our business presents typical tech startup issues around IP, data privacy, and vendor relations, it also presents novel regulatory risks and opportunities. Como will enter, and in fact has already entered, two heavily regulated housing markets, Los Angeles and New York. Many municipalities in these locales regulate or prohibit short-term rentals. Rather than exposing us to risk, these ordinances create an opportunity for Como. For example, in Los Angeles' rent-controlled apartments, millions of tenants are barred from using Airbnb and leveraging their most valuable asset, the apartment they're paying for. Como will create a legal opportunity for such renters by sidestepping transactions altogether, allowing renters in controlled markets to enter the sharing economy through our social network.
And furthermore, so Como is exposed, or at least potentially exposed, to liabilities arising out of theft of property, personal injury, similar liabilities. Fortunately, Section 230 of the Communication Decency Act immunizes essentially websites from liability arising from postings on their website. So we've kind of enjoyed that benefit, and then with some of our research, a little bit of a pivot we've made, the new model really has cemented that kind of protection. So.
Great, thank you guys. So as far as our go-to-market, we believe that the organic virality from these network effects, you blasting out your profile to text your friends, is going to kind of initially start up this hockey stick growth. We project 15% monthly user growth. That will result in about 13 million users by 2026. Note that's users, not members. Of course, fewer of them are going to be upsold into members. We believe that as the hockey stick starts to go up, influencer marketing is going to be key, maybe using Vitest, who knows. Through some of these TikTokers, for instance, that blew up. And finally, ASO and SEO optimization will help bump us up to the top of the App Store and ads. So who's the competition here? Well, the competition, in the top left and the bottom right are your kind of traditional players, your hostels and couch surfing in the top left, your sketchy cheap options. And in the bottom right are your more expensive, but obviously more secure options, hotels, Vrbo, Airbnb. And in the top right is our kind of newer niche segment of affordable and secure options, and let's go over who they are. So the two companies on the right, Home Exchange and Love Home Swap, are the extant players. These are European companies that are doing 8 figures in annual revenue and have about 500,000 properties between them. However, they are missing the market because they are catering exclusively to older homeowners that are primarily swapping their secondary properties. That is not our target market whatsoever. We believe the cash-strapped millennial market is the way to go. So there are 3 startups in this space, Como, Kindred, and MyPlace. We basically see that Kindred is trying to be a clone of Home Exchange and Love Home Swap with this one-to-one swapping model. And MyPlace actually just raised a $6 million seed round with their basically friends kind of sharing their homes network. It's a closed network. They have about 3,000 members on the platform right now. We believe we're kind of the best of both of those two worlds, and we believe importing phone contacts is a moat that will help us win. Oh, and our team is awesome. In the interest of time, we basically check every single box you could think of. I wanted to highlight real quick that Katie was a growth marketer for Course Hero and took them from a few thousand to a unicorn as a startup, and Alan Kleinman is right there, our advisor. We love you, Alan.
And Gus is a full stack engineer from Stanford.
Oh, thank you.
So we're raising $500,000 right now. We've officially opened our round. Ultimately, that's actually to bring on the development team. We're looking at the greatest summer of travel in history. And I could lock Gus away in a room and hope to God that he build this thing in 3 months. But if we could actually bring on the engineering talent right now, we can compete with the new other startups that are going after the same market. If you look at our revenue build, I think we're totally understating now what our potential is, and a lot of that was just not to deviate off of the business plan that we submitted formally for this competition. But that's just 240,000 users by 2026. That's such a small subset of the 13 plus million users that we expect to have, members, excuse me. And this is just looking at the transaction revenue, which is of course selling those insurance policies, and the subscription revenue, which is that $150 annual fee. But ultimately too, there's other paths to monetization, possibly via ads. Here's our product and business roadmap. Again, we just need some capital to pour some gas on the fire so we can go compete this summer and really, revolutionize travel. Thank you.
So let's go back to the idea of the regulations or rules where you cannot have short-term rentals, or you have a house that you're renting and it says you can't sublet it. So tell me again how you get around that.
Yeah, I mean, I think I will say this in some ways was totally validated by My Place and their recent raise of institutional capital. And what they did was they essentially created a social network where they're not facilitating any transactions on the platform. So I could propose to Gus, my friend, in a private connection, hey, Gus, my place is available. Do you want to pay me, $30 on Venmo per night on Venmo under the table, or would you maybe just pay for my cleaning person to come because you're a slob? No offense.
That's okay.
And the idea there is that there's no way to actually regulate that transaction, especially for the home sharing ordinances that these guys discovered too. The real issue is in public listings of your places, and that's really where Airbnb operates and is kind of regulated out. But when you have a private network, a social network of where we all live, there's nothing that these regulators can do to actually come in and try to disrupt these private connections and transactions that are occurring between members of our private community. So again, as long as we're not taking a cut of that, ultimately we are, from what I understand, I'll let them comment on that, immune.
Most places do not explicitly call out swapping. Of course, they ban subletting, assignment, various other Airbnb short-term rentals, but generally swapping is not called out. There's an interesting kind of rub to this. In rent-controlled markets, it's not so easy to change a lease, so those old leases are locked in. In non-rent-controlled markets, the landlord, of course, can change the lease at the expiration of the lease, but our theory is that our users, our members, are going to be very respectful, especially if it's one-for-one swaps, and they're not going to be diminishing the value of the property. So there's no reason why the landlord would want to prevent it. And if anything, it would be an opportunity for the landlord to increase the price while still maintaining the same care for the property as if the tenant stayed there. So it's a win-win.
What's your plan for getting the free users into paid model so that you're making revenue?
Yeah, so it really goes down to the value that we provide beyond it kind of goes down with the beta that we have right now, right? So we've been trying to create trust across the network by doing the background checks, by getting people on Skype calls and having them get to know each other and feel each other. And ultimately, that was, again, really difficult, but really learned a lot from doing things that don't scale. But the idea is, if you come in and you're just sharing with your friends, I'm sure we're going to have a ton of users that are just using our platform to, again, discover where their friends live across the globe and coordinate this hypermobility that we're going into. From there, it's you get to see and discover those second and third degree connections when you buy in. And it's kind of like LinkedIn Premium, where all of a sudden you can start having a conversation. And now I'm talking to Gus's mutual friend that he went to college with. And of course, because we both know Gus, hopefully from there, we feel more comfortable, especially with all the platform stuff that is kind of backing us up on swap or exchange, going forward and having, that exchange and saving all that capital.
When I'm not in LA, I'm digital nomading myself, and so I probably was one of your viewers. I may have half signed up on your platform. My interest is about the point system. How does that work?
Yeah, it's a great question. So for those of you who didn't talk about this presentation, but there's a point system, right? And essentially all the other swapping platforms that exist, you can either swap directly one-to-one. It doesn't matter if Gus has a penthouse and I have a studio apartment, or if my place is available, they can pay me in points on this platform and offset your costs and avoid a sublease. We were building a robust point system that's really applicable for the swaps themselves, and it was really creating a marketplace to say if Gus's place is valued at X, and it's not just about, again, the value of his property, it's also about his behavior on the application and some of the amenities he offers, and my place is valued at Y, the difference of those points goes to whoever has the premium place, and it's this idea of creating this stickiness and this value for somebody that feels like they're swapping down. Because there were so many users, the first question they would say was, wait, isn't my place in New York better than that guy's place? How do you account for that? And so really in the swapping mechanism alone, the points have tremendous value, but again, that now is a feature of swapping of a broader network that we're creating.
And what's your competitive advantage? Like, you know, what makes, you know, what prohibits one of these other apps that already have raised all this money from just implementing this, right? So right now they're going after maybe specific second home market, but tomorrow they say, oh, well, this is a great market, let me do this.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think ultimately the value is in creating a network that solves a simpler problem. Everybody, including Kindred in my place, was trying to solve, specifically Kindred, was trying to solve the broader problem which we all experience, which is it's just really expensive to travel elsewhere. We looked at a way to get in there and solve sooner, to be like, well, why don't we just find out where our friends live across the globe, create a network of value that users come back to over and over again, and then from there we'll solve the more complex problem of trying to create liquidity in a two-sided marketplace of home exchanges. But ultimately, like, if I'm signed up, I don't need, maybe I need multiple dating apps because there's different types of people that I'm trying to date, or I want to have A/B testing on my profiles. But I don't need different apps to find out where my friends live across the globe. In fact, I just need one, and the one that exists right now, that my place that raised the $6 million, that was all based on your Google information, where none of us store our contact information. That's why we are going so quickly to the market with this mobile app, and we know that that's what they're using their capital to do as well, is to be able to scrape, but not scrape, is to be able to import your phone contacts that you opt into, and show you your network across the globe. And so we know that that's the source of truth for the the people that we know. It's who's stored in our phone, not our Gmails.
Can you explain to me a little bit better how the point system works? Now I have points, what do I do with them?
Sure. So the point system is based on, I believe, 14 different variables. The main one is we have a connection to Zillow's API, the rent Zestimate for your place. It's kind of starts there, goes based on some of the amenities you might have, like if you're offering a car, for instance, if your place has, like a Peloton or something like that, that'll increase your value incrementally. Whether it's your own place or if you're living with a roommate, for instance, that'll change the value as well. So that is, we have an algorithm that we've already developed for that. As far as when we were originally just totally a swapping, home exchanging play, the idea would be that you could maybe even buy points, and the points in the future could be exchanged for things like airline miles or discounted gym memberships or other kind of tangible rewards later on down the line, or of course you could exchange them to swap up, as Bob was saying.
Yeah, so again, it's very specific, I think, for the home swapping aspect of this, but like what we saw from my place is, if you have a friend and you just want to offer your place at cost to recoup that because your asset's sitting underutilized, they will send you a Venmo, and we don't have to regulate that as a platform because I'm not going to screw over Gus for staying at his place as his friend, or he'll never let me back on and disconnect with me moving forward. So, ultimately we think people do want to earn cash if they can and avoid, dealing with the sell-lease laws, but then the point system is another tool that we get to empower our users with and allow them to make that decision themselves. So we're just helping them discover and make these decisions in that broader network.
So if I've got a place and you've got a place and it's exactly the same amount of points and we swap, do I pay anything?
Just the annual membership fee, and then hopefully if we agree to purchasing the damage insurance policy, because I don't want to spill wine on your couch and have to pay for that.
And that's a major source of our revenue, is the damage insurance, which we get 50% of every policy sold.
In your most basic use case, you say if I go to an Airbnb, it's $140 a night. What is your dollar? Have you put a dollar amount to the savings in this model?
To the savings of the model? Well, what's the $150 annual membership fee, which is on par with all the other home exchange pure players that exist in the market right now. And then, yeah, a lot of that is just because we know that that's one night at an Airbnb. If you do one swap and one exchange of funds, any value incrementally and annually, we know you're not going to churn because there's so much that you can get for one night at an Airbnb to be a member of Como.
Is there calling time for us this week? We'd love to answer more questions. We're here after judging if anyone wants to do something.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to take the judges and take them to a secret place to deliberate. And we will be back, I hope, by 7:30, 7:25. So please come back, and for those of you at home, please tune back in at 7:25, and we'll have a result for you. Okay. Welcome back, everyone. I have to say, so this is our 6th year. This was the most difficult discussion I've ever had with the judges, right? They had a very, very difficult time because it was such a great group of presentations and such a great group of business plans. So congratulations to all of you. And I felt that way too. I read all the plans, and I've been reading them for 6 years, and I read all the plans of all the teams that submit. And this has really been a terrific year. You guys really put in a tremendous amount of work, and so congratulations to you. And as far as I'm concerned, you're all winners, but you know how these competitions work. We have to pick some winners for the competition. So I'm going to start with the second place prize. And the second place prize goes to Lost Abroad. With a handwritten certificate there. So stand right over here, and we'll have the photographer take it.
Just right in front of the podium would be awesome. Very good. Whole team in there. Big smile. Oh, yeah. Well done. Awesome.
Thank you.